Thanks for coming back to Shooting It Straight with me, Antonius. And you're watching another episode in my series entitled All About Glocks. As promised earlier, we're talking about the Glock slide components, the disassembly of it, and the reassembly procedure. Now you might be surprised here on a couple of things, because I'm going to point out just a couple of very important steps in the reassembly procedure that, if not done in a particular way, could very easily lead to malfunctions when shooting. And this is quite common, so pay attention here. Alright, let's get into it. We remove our recoil spring assembly, the RSA, that's what it's called, RSA, recoil spring assembly. Not recoil guide or anything like that, RSA, recoil spring assembly. So, correct nomenclature is important when you're talking, firearms. While I'm at it, the dual recoil springs here are rated by Glock for around 5,000 rounds, while the single ones, like in your generations 1, 2, and 3, the single recoil springs are rated for 2,500 rounds. However, these springs can go well beyond those counts. Now the RSAs, either one, the dual spring or the single spring, they're not designed or intended to be disassembled. There is a particular way you can disassemble the single recoil spring assembly, but that's not something I'm willing to show you because, as I said, it's not intended to be disassembled, but you can do it anyway. There are ways. We remove the barrel. Alright, lift up, pull out, right? Now, on the barrel, we have the chamber. Okay, we have the lower and upper feed ramps. That's the lower feed ramp, that's the upper. We got the lugs down here. We have the throat, which is right in here. Right here, the area right before the rifling starts. This is the throat area. Partially the chamber and partially the barrel. Okay. Let's see. We've got the muzzle. And we've got the crown right here. Alright. The polygonal rifling is inside the bore. The bore is in here. And that's where your polygonal rifling is. The spiraled rifling spins the bullet, giving it a gyroscopic effect while the bullet's in flight. Now that greatly stabilizes the bullet for accuracy and velocity, much like throwing a football, So now, hold on. Damn it. So now we're left with only the slide and its components. We've got our barrel here, and we've got our RSA. And before we completely disassemble it, let's just take a minute to examine and identify the areas of it. These cuts in here, or grooves on both sides, are the slide rail cuts. Alright, that's where the 4 rails on your frame slide. Alright, That's where they fit, slide rail cuts. Now you have this portion right here, right in the center, this raised bar. This is your stripper bar or stripper rail. And it's called that because it strips the rounds from the magazine. When you shoot and your slide goes back, it ejects the empty, right? Well, it's got to strip the top cartridge from the magazine and push it into the chamber. Well, it does it by using that stripper rail. That's what does it. You know, come to think of it, you probably shouldn't say, you should probably call it stripper rail. You probably don't want to say stripper bar in a conversation with your shooting buddies, since it might start some problems with the wife if she overhears, you know, you say something like that. I don't know. Alright, now we have the ejection port. This is the cutout. This is where your empty case is ejected. Ejection port. Okay, and this is your extractor because it extracts the spent case from the chamber and kicks it out. Alright. Now here's something a lot of people don't know, and I don't know if the lighting is good enough to show it, but there's a hole right here. Okay, there's your firing pin safety right there. Well, on this side of the stripper bar or stripper rail, and then on the opposite side is this hole. Well, that hole is called a weep hole or a port, and it leads directly into the firing pin channel. It is there. It is designed to blow out or expel any debris or water that may enter that firing pin channel. So keep oil or CLP away from that hole, and keep it away from this firing pin safety too, because it can go in here. That oil or cleaner or whatever can get down into this port, and it can get down here at your firing pin safety. And you do not want to get any oil or CLP or solvent or anything down in this firing pin channel. Alright. So I'm forever seeing people on videos just taking their slide and turning it upside down and taking some kind of a aerosol spray cleaner and just spraying the hell out of it. That's the worst thing you could possibly do. That stuff will get down into that firing pin channel through that port, this safety, this area right down in here, the firing pin hole here on the breech face, any number of things, any number of ways like that. Alright, that firing pin channel is designed to remain completely dry, because if you get stuff down in there, it's going to create havoc and it's going to cause malfunctions. Alright, now we got to take some of the components out of here. To do that, we have to take the slide cover plate off. And to do that, we're going to go up here underneath it, and we're just going to push up on this lug. This is your firing pin lug. Push up on it. Alright, that's to fully expose, and you can barely see it. You probably can't see it here, but you can barely see a portion of a black spacer sleeve down in here. Alright, just take your Glock punch, set it down like this, and put it in between, underneath the face of this firing pin lug and on top of that plastic spacer sleeve, and press down. You can only go down just a little bit, but press down on it and hold it down. While you're pressing down and holding it down, you can take your thumb and slide this cover off while you're pressing down on it. Now you want to keep this covered with your thumb because these components here are under spring tension, and they'll go flying off if you don't keep your thumb over it. Alright? Alright, got the plate off. Now I'm going to, okay, there's my plate, slide cover plate. Now we can take the firing pin out, the firing pin assembly out. Just push up on the lug and just pull it completely out. That's your firing pin assembly. Now we're going to take out the Extractor, Depressor, Plunger assembly. And that's this right here where this white plastic tip is. Just lift it up. And pull it right on out. Alright. Extractor, Depressor, Plunger assembly. This is what puts tension. This goes right in here. And this right here is what pushes up against the rear of your extractor, giving your extractor the tension it needs to hold on to the spent case rim to eject it. Alright. Now you can turn it upside down and depress the firing pin safety to get your extractor out, and it should fall right out. Sometimes you might have to pluck it out. Then turn it around to get the safety out. Alright. Now this extractor is also designed to serve as a loaded chamber indicator, or commonly abbreviated to LCI. Now this one in particular is an LCI, loaded chamber indicator. You can tell by this notch right here. There are some older ones out there that are non-LCI. They're not loaded chamber indicators. They're the old design of extractor that just goes across here real smooth. You know, there's no cuts in it or anything like that. Those are non-LCIs. The milled out area right here of your extractor is called the debris channel. This is what kicks debris out and keeps your extractor from getting fouled up and and keeps it able to move. Alright. Alright, the only component remaining in the slide now is another polymer liner in here. Okay, it's the channel liner, and it goes right down in here. So let's touch on that. It is intended to stay in the firing pin channel, and it should only be removed for replacement purposes. And once you remove it, you're going to have to put a new one in. You can't put the old one back in, because removing it, you'll tear up the channel liner. So you'll need to put a new one in. Now here's a special note here. If you ever decide to have your slide machined or milled or refinished or something like that, that liner must be removed first. The heat will warp it in there. And here's how to remove that channel liner if you have to. Use the proper tool. That's the proper way. And here's the proper tool. It's got a threaded end that you put down in here. It goes all the way down in there until you meet resistance, or the top of that channel liner. This is what it looks like. This is a brand new channel liner, but your channel liner is in here. And this tool you'll put right down in that firing pin channel. Press and turn, because what you're doing is screwing this into that channel liner to get a grasp on it so that you can pull it out. That's how you pull it out. Now if you don't have a tool like this and need to get it out, you can use a bronze bristle bore brush to force it down in here and then pull it back out. Again, you'll have to throw the old one away and put a new one in. And the way to put a new one in is with this tool again. Now the opposite side here is smooth. Alright, so you'll start that channel liner right here, and then once it drops in there, you'll tap it back, all the way with your tool here. Just tap it on down. Tap it, not hammer it, tap it. Okay? And again, if you don't have a tool like this to seat it properly, you can use a 5/16 wooden dowel to seat it in there like that. Alright, now getting back to that firing pin safety, I'll use this one. Alright, the spring here is press fit into the safety. If it falls out, or should it fall out, or you need to replace it or something like that, well, let's see. Just put it back in, press it in, and give it about a half a turn counterclockwise, and you'll feel it click. And when you feel it click, then it'll be set. Okay? And listen, please don't call this a firing pin plunger or a safety plunger. Alright, there's only one plunger on a Glock pistol, and that is the Extractor Depressor plunger, which we'll take a look at right now. Alright, let's disassemble it. Alright, all you have to do is separate the spring from the plunger itself. Sometimes that's hard to do. And then this polymer bearing here, if I can, there. This polymer bearing here, so that's it. That's the three parts. There, there, and there. So you got the Extractor Depressor plunger spring, the spring-loaded bearing. Now, mine is these are color coded, okay, for caliber. Mine is white, and white is for 40 caliber and 357 calibers. All right. Your 9mm are black. The 10mm and 45 is green. Okay. Now, this is to prevent using the wrong bearings in the wrong caliber Glock, since the head here, or the shoulder, of the bearings are slightly different in size and length and must match with the correct type of extractor being used, either the LCI or the older non-LCI. Alright, so you have to get those right. They're color coded. If I put a black one or a green one in here, then I'll have extraction problems, because this is what puts tension on the extractor. And to put it back together is just as simple as that right there. Alright, let's look at the firing pin assembly. And once again, there are some things here that you really need to take note of. But first, let's clarify another thing. Glock refers to this as a firing pin, not a striker. The word striker is nowhere to be found in Glock's official vernacular. So it is not a striker, it is a firing pin. Now, we're mincing words there, but you know, and sometimes I still catch myself calling it a striker. Alright, because it is a type of striker fired gun, right? So I don't know, man. But I try to go by what Glock says. Alright, now let's disassemble it. And I really hesitate to disassemble it because, and I think I've touched on this before, I'm old, alright? And because of a situation, my hands are shaky. I get real shaky. And these tiny little cups right here, firing pin spring cups, are very hard for me to handle and get right. And I don't want to sit here and spend 15 minutes fighting with these damn things, because I've done that before. Alright. Now, basically, if you want to disassemble this, you use your slide, okay? And you use the firing pin channel. You turn this up, you turn this like this, and you put it with a lug to the side here, and you use it that way, and you just take your fingers and grab the spring and pull down. When you pull down, then you can take these cups off. And once you remove these cups, then the spring will come right off too. And once the spring comes off, well, you can take this spacer sleeve off as well. So spacer sleeve, spring, the two halves of the cups, that's what makes up the firing pin. Okay, you don't have to watch me do that. You know how to do that. I just showed you. Put it in here, pull the spring down, take the cups off, take the spring off, take this out, and take the spacer sleeve off. That's it. And to put it back together, just do the opposite. The trouble starts though, and I'll use this spare firing pin spring. The trouble starts when you're trying to put these cups back on, and the tops of these cups have to rest on the spring here, the top of the spring, right? Oh, it's such a bitch for me. Okay. Fuck it. Now they got to rest on top of the cups here, right? Well, the thing is, here's what you want to pay attention to. The last coil on this spring on either end, where that last coil stops and comes to an end, when you put those cups together, you don't want that seam of the two cups to be right above that end of that spring right there. Okay, because what will happen then is this side of the this half of the cups will be a little bit higher than the cup on this side. Okay, so you'll have the tops of your spring cups sitting like that. Now that may not sound like a big difference, and it may not look like a big difference, but it can be a big difference. It can cause light primer strikes. It can create enough of an offset to cause a light primer strike. So make sure that where these cups separate is not at the end of that cut off coil. Okay, if you see that, if they are there, just pull that spring down a little bit and rotate those cups around to get them away. Where those cups separate, you want them away from the end of that last spring, that last coil. You want them away from it. You want that separation point to be over here, not sitting on top of that. Okay, and in addition to having it offset like that, this could also cause the cups to spread apart just a little bit. It only takes 1 millimeter to cause a light primer strike, and if those cups separate and widen, it's going to interfere with these cups going through this sleeve the way it's supposed to, and it's going to cause drag and friction, and it's going to slow the pen down enough to cause a light primer strike, because the cups have separated a little bit. So absolutely watch out for that. And look, changing the weight of this spring, this trigger, firing pin spring, can cause problems. Switching the factory spring out for a competition light spring is a major contributor to the common problem of triggers failing to return to its fully forward position. Since this spring is what pushes the firing pin lug, this is what pushes the firing pin lug forward, and that lug pushes the trigger bar forward to push the trigger forward. So if you've got a light firing pin spring in here, it may not at times be strong enough to do that effectively, and that'll cause that trigger to fail to go into complete reset. And I'm talking about the trigger itself, not the connector and sear and all that, but I'm talking about the trigger. Okay. So we talked about that. Alright, you got that? Alright, so you got that. So, fellas, that's about it for this episode of All About Glocks. Stay alert for more videos in this series, and to catch other videos stuffed full of good information and facts relative to firearms, gun world myths, and defensive shooting. So, thanks for watching. I'm Antonius, and I'm dedicated to shooting it straight with you. Ciao.